In the 1990s is when you started to see the development of real estate technology, where homes were available online and people could start to search for them. After you get into the 1990s, so we're getting closer to today's time, you're starting to see online technology take over. You're seeing real estate brokers at a higher rate than ever before. Overall, all of this time we've been talking about, the licensing part of the industry for real estate didn't change a whole lot. You had the Realtor Association that came in the 1920s time frame. They developed standards of practice, but we haven't really seen much progression in the difficulty to get a license or what getting a license actually means. When we talked in the first true episode about the real estate market being broken, a lot of what we're talking about there is the fact that there's been little to no innovation in real estate. From the 1920s, when you started to see the Fed develop, the GI Bill, all of those things that happened through the 30s and 40s, all of those things were, at that time, innovative. After that, and really after the secondary mortgage market, you haven't seen a change in mortgage lending, you haven't seen a change in licensing, and you haven't seen a change in the overall way that the real estate market is addressed or performs. What we've really seen that's been the most impactful is as lending became easier and easier for people to get, what we saw was debt to income ratios getting out of control. So from 1949 to the year 2000, we went from typical 20%. Your housing expense would typically at that point in the early 1950s would be about 20% of what you make a year, right? So if I'm looking at what do I actually have to pay for my house, how much do I have invested into my home, was around the 20% mark. By the time we got to the year 2000, the turn of the 21st century, we were up to 73%. And it has gone up since then. So housing affordability became a huge problem, which forced banks to make loans easier to get, and also to allow people to put less of their money into the loan, which became innately more and more risky. Initially, loans were structured before we had FHA, VA, and these products that were built to get people in a bad situation into a home. We really just had conventional mortgages, which were typically 20% down. So I'm building equity in the home whenever I'm buying it. So these loan products were great at the time, but what they did was they created an increasing problem that bled right into the early 2000s. And this is when things got serious for us. Like anyone that's alive right now can remember the housing crisis, and it all started way back, right? It's not like we somehow just magically this problem occurred. It was decision after decision of all the way back into the 20s of deciding to try to make homeownership easier for an individual to accomplish. Listen, everybody feels like still they have this American dream of I want to own a home. And most people, if you would ask, does everyone deserve to own a home? They would say yes. My opinion is no, and this is why. Whenever we allow people to get into a scenario that they truly can't afford, which is what we see as running rampant in the real estate industry, we're making it easier for them to get into a position that's actually harmful to them because there's no education on what true housing affordability is. When you saw these debt to income ratios going higher and higher and higher, when we're entering the 70s, 80s, like 80% range of your overall income to what you have to pay for housing, we've got a big problem because it constrains everything else. And really that's when, if you would track back credit history, this was also when credit became a huge thing. So you had credit card companies that started coming around in the 90s, and they got more and more prevalent over time, and that's because people were paying more and more for their housing. if you are spending all of your money to live where you live, then you have no money left over to save for anything or plan for the future. So people are going into a position on a home that they believe that they own, that they have no real ownership in, because they're buying it with little to no money in it, and then markets can fluctuate. And that's exactly what happened going into early 2000s. 2004, we hit the highest home ownership rate ever at 69, 70%. Which is, everyone was at the time like, yay, you know, we have all these people that can own homes, and people are achieving the American dream. And if you would have asked anyone at that point in time, real estate was the safest industry to be in. It was not going anywhere, it was stable, there was no problems. When realistically, we had swept all of this stuff under the rug. We had made the market look like something that it wasn't, because we were just giving people things they shouldn't have. If I just say, here is a Lamborghini, you can have this Lamborghini without giving me any money, but you need to pay me $3,000 a month to own it. But I have no idea that you have $3,000 a month. I'm just giving it to you with the hope that you can pay me eventually, right? We created our own problem. And so at the peak of this 2004 timeframe, everyone was rose-colored glasses, best industry, best market ever. Home ownership's at an all-time high, we've got no worries. And then in 2007 is when you started to see things fall apart. You really had, between that 2004, 2006 range, Fannie and Freddie in that secondary mortgage market that we talked about bought trillions of dollars of mortgage-backed securities. And these were mainly in subprime lending. And subprime just means that, once again, people are being given something that they can't truly afford. It's meant as a supplemental product, but it puts consumers in a bad position. So when we reached the 2006 to 2007 mark, in 2007, foreclosures went up by 75%. The country realized that there was a problem. Banking realized that there was a problem. And then we hit kind of our panic mark of, you have thousands of people losing their homes. Everyone kind of pauses for a second and goes, how did we get here? And there was blame placed on banks, there was blame placed on appraisers, on real estate agents, on mortgage lenders. Everybody was getting the finger pointed. All of those people in those industries were pointing the finger back at the consumer, saying, hey, they should have known they couldn't afford it. Our job is to give them money. Their job is to make sure that it's something that they actually can do, right? Who's right in that scenario? In my opinion, it's the consumer, right? The consumer has the right to assume that if I go to someone who's an expert, who's supposed to tell me what I can or cannot do and give me an approval based on the information that I give them. So if I tell you I make $40,000 a year, this is what I owe to other people, I should have the full knowledge and consent that the other party, the lender, bank, whoever, agent, is going to make sure that that is in my actual affordability range. As a consumer, I should have some personal accountability, I guess, in terms of learning how to budget my money. In the majority of cases, not to get off on a side tangent, but our educational system has never been built to educate us on what affordability is, how mortgages work, how to budget your money, how to build wealth. So you're dealing with a lot of people that are at a disadvantage. They don't understand how a mortgage truly works, and they're signing things that they're not prepared for. So you ended up with thousands of people in terrible situations who went through foreclosure, lost their homes. These were subprime loans, these were FHA loans, these were VA loans, these were conventional loans. The finger was pointed mainly in the subprime direction, saying, oh, well, banks shouldn't have lent to people in the subprime market. It was not just the subprime market. It was overall, we made bad decisions from the 30s all the way until that point in time.